Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I am going to be starting the Drudigar adventure. So this is a VidQuest, and what it is it's an entire Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adventure presented in the form of videos. And it's cut up into different sections, and each section will contain an event or a non-player character or a magic item or a location. Okay, the primary elements of any adventure. And so when you watch the videos in order, you'll be able to see the full sweep of the adventure. You'll know all the non-player characters that are involved in it. You'll know all the equipment that they have. You will know all the events that occur during the adventure. You'll know all the locations where that the adventure occurs in. Now, today's video is a summary of the adventure. Now, that will give you a chance of saying, oh, that's something useful. I can actually use that in my game. Or you might say, oh, maybe I'll modify it. Or you could say, oh, I'm not really interested in that. That really doesn't fit my game, right? Now, I will give a I'll try to sell even the people who think, okay, I shouldn't watch the Drudigar adventure because I don't like the summary, right? I would still go ahead and check out the other videos, because you could take the way I'm going to be building it is each video is modularly, like, here's a location, here's a non-player character, here's an item. So those can be lifted directly out of the adventure and used in your next game. So I believe the Drudigar adventures are fair. The Drudigar adventure will be useful to you regardless. All right. So let's get into it. Today's video is a summary of the Drudigar adventure. So it's a summary of the story of what will occur. So let's jump right in. So the player characters spend a very pleasant day in a village in a very snowy clime. Okay, so it's a very cold region. It is snowing the whole time that they're in the village, and it doesn't look like the snow is going to be letting up anytime soon. And it's essentially about it's maybe about 6 inches deep while they're there. But the adventurers need to continue on, right? So they leave the village and they venture out. Okay, when the adventuring party, the player characters adventure out from the village, they will go between 5 and 10 miles, and then they will encounter, Lig, and tangentially they'll encounter Drudigar. So let's talk about Lig and Drudigar. So Lig is a very, very powerful wizard, okay? And he is a member of a specific wizard's guild. And essentially, he's a critical member, because what he is essentially, he and Drudigar are not only powerful active wizard. He's not only a powerful active wizard, but he is actually the repository for his wizard's guild. Okay, and so essentially, what Lig is he's essentially a wizard. Now I'll explain what Drudigar is in a minute. Now, the player characters will encounter Lig, all right? And when they encounter him, Lig is essentially, what they're going to do is one of them will see blood. They'll see drops of blood on the snow. Now, if any of them, pass their perception check and they see this, they can immediately follow that path of blood about 40 or 50 feet to a tree where Lig is at the base of the tree, okay? Now, when they get within 20 feet of Lig, he'll put out his hand and he'll say, please don't approach any closer. And the reason why is, if you approach any closer, he has put up a warding spell, right? And he said, you'll trigger that warding spell on yourself, and I don't want you to be harmed, right? And at that point, he is bleeding out, right? And he's dying. And he says, and so immediately the player characters may attempt to save him. Well, one, they can't physically approach him. And even if they can cast on him, he says, hey, again, do not cast any spells anywhere close to my ward, because it will trigger, right? And I don't want you to be harmed, right? He says, but listen, you have to listen to me carefully. I'm dying and I need your help, right? And he says, and he is pin-cushioned with arrows. He has 5 arrows in him, right? And the arrows each have a rune that is glowing near where it's fletched. Okay, small rune, and they each have a different symbol. Each of the arrows have a different symbol, and they're each glowing, right? And so he says, please listen to me. He says, I need your help. They're not going to understand. Drudigar is upset, and they're not going to understand, and they're going to try to kill him. You have to protect Drudigar. Please, please, please protect Drudigar. Promise me, right? And so he's asking them to promise to protect Drudigar. Now, they may say yes, and they may say no, okay? The player characters. At that point, regardless of whatever their answer is, he dies. Lig dies. He bleeds out. His ward drops, okay? And at that point, he dies, right? Now, at that point, the player characters are going to be able to investigate the scene. And what they will find is they will find the prints of a creature, okay? Now, that creature is Drudigar. And I'm going to explain who Drudigar is to you right now. So, Drudigar is a direwolf. Drudigar is a direwolf who served as the mount of Lig, okay? Now, Lig is a super powerful wizard, and he is a repository for all the spells of his wizard's school, right? His specific wizard's guild, okay? And essentially, Drudigar is Lig's mount. So Lig rides him like a horse, okay? And Drudigar is completely tame and completely controlled when he's in Lig's presence. He is completely, uncontrolled and a savage direwolf when he's not, in Lig's presence. And he's particularly that way right now because he actually saw his master shot with 5 different arrows, and his master commanded him to run, okay? Now, on Drudigar are 4 long, slim spell books. And in those 4 long, slim spell books are spells. Those spells are every single spell, wizard spell in the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Player's Handbook. Every single one. And the reason why is all the wizards of his guild they keep him as a repository, okay? For all the spells of the guild, right? He's very, like I said, very high-end, high-level wizard, okay? Now, why did he just die, okay? So here's what's going on. So he has just asked the players, Lig has just asked the players, please protect Drudigar. They don't know who or what Drudigar is. You know, as the dungeon master, what Drudigar is. He's a direwolf. And that direwolf, guess where he's on the way to? His prints in the snow will clearly lead the player characters right back to the village where Drudigar is on his way to, he's headed toward the village, right? And if he encounters any civilians from the village, he will attack them and kill them, right? Because he's essentially raging, right? He's really, really upset. He's angry, right? And he's reverting, fully back to his, savage, wild, direwolf days before he met Lig, who is his best buddy in the world and who he has really enjoyed being a mount for. He's served a purpose for a long time, right? Beyond being the leader of his pack, which is his purpose before he met Lig, right? Now, the players can immediately run toward Drudigar, and at that point, Lig said, I need you to protect Drudigar, right? So clearly he wants them to keep Drudigar alive. He wants them to help Drudigar, right? So the players have to determine, how do we calm a raging wild direwolf? How do we protect the village? And do we kill Drudigar, or do we restrain him in some other way? Okay, so that's fully going to be decided by the player characters, right? And Drudigar, he's no joke. He's a serious mount, and he also has magical protections on him that were put there by Lig. So he's a major threat when the player characters reach him. Now, before they reach Drudigar, they are going to run into White. Now, White is a team of assassins. It is 5 women, all who serve as an assassin, as a team of assassins, a team that does assassinations. That's the best way to term it. So White is an adventuring group that serve together, non-player characters, of course. They're all human females, right? And their group name comes from a very distinct attribute of their group, which is they all wear pure white outfits. Okay, they also all ride pure white horses. Okay, now this is in a snowy clime, right? So that actually serves as camouflage in this situation. But you'll see that that's not a coincidence once you learn more about White. Okay, now White, they are the ones who killed Lig, right? But they didn't kill Lig to kill Lig. Their end goal is to get those spell books, right? So they left his body because they ran after Drudigar, right? But at this point, they have lost Drudigar, and they're trying to find his path again, right? And so, and they're an incredibly deadly group of non-player characters, right? Their goal is to get those spell books, okay? And they don't really care about Lig, they don't care about Drudigar, they care about getting that entire set of spell books because it is every known wizard spell, every majorly known wizard spell that's not custom, essentially, right? So the value on those books is extremely high, right? And they also, just so you're aware, they also have the annotations of Lig's Wizards Guild, which even in themselves is incredibly valuable. So this is an incredibly valuable set of books. One man has already died for them, right? Which the player characters have already encountered. So White is this group, and so once the player characters go to encounter Drudigar, they're going to come across White, right? The entire group. And so White will just come out come out from a few trees, and they'll encounter them. Okay. Now at this point, they're gonna, essentially, at that point, there should not be, there aren't any visual clues other than that one of the team, White, actually has a longbow, but the arrows are actually, the quiver is actually hooded, right? So there's no proof, really, that they killed Lig. And so there'll be a little bit of back and forth between the player characters and White. And White will say, oh, you know what? We're looking for an old man. By the way, White was not really sure that Lig died, right? They essentially, put a bunch of arrows in him. He stumbled off. And he told Drudigar, run, run, run. And they immediately followed Drudigar, and Drudigar lost them, okay? So they're going to say, hey, we're looking for an old man, and he's riding an unusual mount, right? Actually, I'm sorry. They'll say, we're looking for an old man, and they will describe Lig completely, okay? And at that point, that may be another additional trigger where the players just throw down and there's a big combat between White and the player characters. Or they may go on their way. They may say, oh, yeah, that old man is over there. And, tell them to go a different way than he really is, right? And then they could pursue Drudigar again. Now, when they get to Drudigar, they have to decide, are we going to kill Drudigar? Are we going to restrain him, right? And depending on how quickly they go, they may not get to him until he has gone all the way to the point where he's reached the village, right? And so that's another, as the dungeon master, you get to decide, do they find Drudigar before he's encountered any kind of civilians? Has he already downed this civilian, which means, the player characters may have even more incentive to down Drudigar, even though they've given a promise to protect him to Lig, perhaps, depending on how that interaction happened, right? So that is the full story of Lig and Drudigar and the team of, the assassin team who killed Lig, right? And it is also the story of those 4 spell books that contain all of the spells in the player handbook, all annotated by Lyg's Wizards Guild. Now, coming up, I'll give you all the details for White, all the details for Lyg, all the details for Drudigar, all the details for the village, and all the details for the location where the player characters encountered Lyg and where they encountered and where they can encounter White and where they can encounter Drudigar. And so that will give you everything you need to actually run this for your players. And so that is the Drudigar adventure, my second VidQuest. And if you're interested in this, I've already done one VidQuest, which is a Dungeons & Dragons adventure that you can run, which is called Ulyane Village. Thank you. Take care.